Hey, John here. Today we're going to get two of the settings screens to work, the AI selection screen and the game rules screen. We're going to get them first to set the settings dictionary in the global variable. And then we're going to, as a second step, get the AI or the gameengine.py file to actually honor the settings and change the gameplay. Let's get started. Let me show you what I've done so far. This is getting the settings panels to actually reflect in this settings dictionary over here. So I've added onto this dictionary a little bit. We've got the AI chosen, who plays first, and then a more intuitive first player, it's either user or AI, seeds per house selection, and then the more intuitive actual seeds per house, which is starting off with 4. But as you can see down here, that's the index 1 selection. So that's what this is about. The capture rule, the end of game rule, and I already had seed drop right over here. I also now have, though, I've added first off a shortcut to the character, which I default to the AI chosen from the AI list. I now also have a group of visual settings, which I use in the KIVI file. These are all the possible selections for each one of these settings. So who plays first, seeds per house, and so on. And now I have a generic function I've written, and this is in main.py, called update setting, where you can pass in a setting name and a value, and it sets it. Largely speaking, it's as straightforward as it sounds. It's setting name equals value. But there's a little bit more to it, because some of these, like if I change who plays first, I also want to set the first player rule as well, because that's not in the settings thing, but that's make things more intuitive later on in our software. So same thing with seeds per house down here, seeds per house selection. I'll set the more intuitive seeds per house. So I'm not trying to figure out is a 1 a 4 seeds, which it is, but now I can just go seeds per house and it says 4. So I know it makes it easier, so I can do calculations easier. And then, more importantly, down here, I actually changed the menus to reflect the new changed selection by the user. So it goes into app, which is the application we're running, root screens. So this is the setting rule screens where we change most things. Notice I do a return over here, because if I'm changing the AI, I don't have anything to change down here. I'll probably end up monkeying with this update settings things a bit as I add more and more setting screens. I already can tell that. But anyway, going to the setting rule screens, finding the setting rule screen menu, setting the text for the setting name, and visual settings setting name value. So it's doing a lookup up here. So if you have capture rule index 1, it'll actually return this text and put it onto the screen. So pretty straightforward. I also have for initialization, I have generically apply settings down here, which just goes to the settings. So down here, when we're building the Mancala app on start, it now runs generically apply settings so that it'll set all of the defaults in the KV file properly. So let's go into that KV file. See down here in the pop-ups, I'm defaulting the pop-up for game selection to where it was before. Everything's hard-coded because you really can't change anything, so I'm leaving things as is. But let's go to the first pop-up where you can change things. Who first? Now I'm referencing that global variable, visual settings, who plays first. Now, how am I getting to that global variable? That's because way up here at the top of this file, I'm now importing from main, which is where main.py is running. I'm importing settings, character, update setting, which is the function that we wrote, update setting, and visual settings, which is a which was this thing right here. So it's a dictionary of lists. So let's scroll down here, down to our pop-ups. So for each pop-up, I now have this list of selections coming from visual settings. I have the initial selected item coming from settings. So end of EOG rule here, that's defaults instead of defaulting to 0. So if I don't put this entry in here, it'll default to 0. Now we can default to whatever the current settings variable reflects. And on selection, I now have a rule that's running update setting with the name of the thing to be changed and what the current selection is, or current selected. So here I'm defaulting to this, and if it changes, it passes that on to update setting. I've already tested this, so it does run. Let me go ahead and show it to you. Just for testing purposes, I have this thing printing out on the screen over here what the current settings variable and the current character when the character changes is. So if I go over to Maisie as the current opponent, if I hit next, it'll show a new character here, and it's with a name of Billy, which is now reflected on the screen. All right, so that's working. It's changing the character. And then if I go to who plays first, if I choose opponent, you'll see in the background immediately it changes the settings to opponent, which is who plays first. That's option 1, because remember in Python everything is indexed by 0, so that's 0 and that's 1, and now shows a 1. And I also change first player, which is the more intuitive thing, because the value of 2 represents the AI, so 1 and 2. And if I change that back, you'll see it change it back here again. Now player 1, which is the user, but it's the first index in the who plays first selection list. Let's go and keep it on opponent, and what we should see is if I hit done, it's changed it here. Who plays first is now pointing to opponent. Same thing here, I can set this to 6 seeds. Now seeds per house says 6. And over here, seeds per house selection is 3, because that was the third item. And then more intuitively, I set seeds per house to 6, so we can actually calculate off that. And then the rest of this, never allow capturing, changed it here. Move seeds to the player that ended the game. So we can now change all the rules, and it's now reflected in the global settings dictionary. Which is great, because now we're going to pass it back to the game engine so it can actually change its behavior based on the things we're now changing in that dictionary. So that's next. All right. It should be working. I'm sure there's bugs. I'm sure I've introduced bugs, but it seems to be working so far. We'll be playing with it for a while, getting all the little bits and pieces out of the system. Let's go ahead and take a look at the game engine. By the way, I don't know if you noticed it during the fast forward, but I brought up idle so I could test the gameengine.py file more directly. In text mode rather than waiting for the animation and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes that's the easier way to do things. I went ahead and created a new superclass of Negamax. Negamax is the AI engine from Easy AI that actually makes all the decisions, because I wanted to interrupt it a bit. I wanted to, for some characters, here under call, that's where it actually goes and gets the next move from the AI character. If the strategy for the current character was random, then I wanted it, in fact, to return a random move. So it calls the self_random move up here, grabs the possible moves from the current game, and chooses one of those random moves. Also, if the character had an error rate, look at our list of characters here. Some characters like Billy here, he's got a 20% error rate, which means that 1 in 5 times he'll just choose a random selection, is what that amounts to. And so if he happens to hit that random chance, then he will make a random move as well. Otherwise, he'll make a rational negamax move. So that's all I've done here for this new class here. I do pass in settings and character to make things easier to handle for settings and characters. Let's go here. Now, as part of the initialization, you pass in settings and characters. So getting back to our main app here down at the bottom, I now pass the global settings and character dictionaries so that the game engine can see them. And it gets stored in self.settings, self.character. Here I'm using our new superclass for negamax called Mancala AI, and I'm passing again settings and character in so that it can get all those things, and it's now tied into the main app and it can use that information. And in fact, here's their first use of that: self.endPlayer, self settings first player. So it actually pulls who goes first from there. And then here under reset board at the very end of init here, let's go find the reset board routine. Here it is. It's using the seeds per house to set the generic internal variable seeds per house for the whole class. And it uses that elsewhere to, like here, when it's setting up the number of seeds that are in the hand and then dropping into the pit based on seeds per house. So it's resetting the board properly. I'm not going to go into detail about every tiny little move I made in here, but that's the bulk of it in here. Well, actually, let me show you the game moves. Here under captures, I'm now looking at the capture rule. Do I look and see if there is an opposite, if there's anything in the opposite pit to determine whether I capture or not capture? I follow this state. Otherwise, if it's the second option, which is capture even if the opposite pit is empty, it will do this. And then if it doesn't allow captures, ironically, I just commented those out because it won't do a capture if it doesn't allow captures. Very similar to just like here, end of game handling. So if game is over, we follow the first end of game rule, which is the traditional one where each side scoops up their own pits. If it's a very common variation where the player that is empty gets all of the seeds, it makes for a very different game though. And then the end of game rule where the player who forced the game to end gets it. And that is a very distinct variation than this other one, whoever is empty. Because oftentimes the person that causes the game to end is the person that empties out their own pits by moving their last seed into the store. But that's not always how it ends. Sometimes the other guy does a capture which empties the other side. So this game handles both. Does it go to the person with no seeds, or does it with empty houses, or does it go to the player who forced the game to end? So those are two different options. Or do you leave the seeds alone? And again, I just commented out this last rule because you just leave the seeds where they are. So that's the change in the game engine. Mancala.kv has a subtle change here. I now call a routine called start new game whenever you click on the new game button. So instead of resume, which just takes you back to the previous screen, starting a new game now has to be handled by the state engine. But let me go to app start new game so you can see it. Here where we define our app, get to the right place here. Here we go. On start, generically apply settings. Oh, here it is. Start new game. That's what's called by the button from Mancala.kv. Machine input request new game. So I'm sending an input into the state machine. Let's go look at the state machine now. If it's in pending, it just gets ignored, of course. But if it's an init state or any of the other states, there's now an input handler for here under start turn. If it sees it, request new game, it goes back to init game. I did add a little bit to init game to where I take to see if there's any board, if there are any seeds already out. Like, is the board empty, or does it have seeds available, or are there seeds in there? If there's seeds in there, then you want to clean the board out first and then drop new seeds because you're restarting. So the AI hand does a clear board routine added to the hand seed animation. So I passed it a optional parameter here, clear first, and if you go look at the code, it's fairly self-evident, nothing magical there. But it does clear the board. There is a minor bug we'll see in a second where the seeds seem to disappear visually when we go back into a reset game, and I'll have to concentrate on that one and try to figure out why they're doing that. So you're about to see a program with a minor bug still in there, and I'm leaving it in there until I figure it out. So here's start the game. All right, so maximize this. So setting up board, I can now go in, I can change these things, I can go back here and I can start a new game if I wanted to for any of those buttons. But let's go ahead and change something here. Let's lower the number of seeds. Now ironically, I got a known problem where I can't do 5 and 6 seeds because I don't have enough seed images in my KV file. I'll run out of images. I literally can't drop enough on the board. I'll fix that in a bit. I'm going to try to figure out a more dynamic way to create those things so I don't just have this huge KV file like I have right now. Let's go ahead and set it to 3 though. I can definitely do 3. And let's make another change too. Let's let's make it to where we can't do captures. So never allow a capture. All right, new game. Now it's going to clear the board. See, the seeds are missing. It's supposed to be picking them up, but they're not visually there. But now it's dropping them in. Now I got 3 seeds per pit. So far it hasn't crashed. It should be, I'll choose this. Yeah. So it's dropping my 3. The AI will make a choice. Interesting. Oh, I guess because it knows it. I don't know why it chose that. Doesn't matter. Oh, that's right. Currently it's on the easiest AI, so everything's random right now. It's not making smart moves. At any rate, if I do click on this pit right here, it'll go 1, 2, 3 and drop the pit, but it won't do a capture. It wouldn't do a capture normally because there's nothing empty here, but even if I had it to where it would capture an empty, it won't. But well, that's good. It'll leave the seed there. Let's let him make another move. Let's do that. Now so 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, good grief. I'm having a hard time. Oh, if I click on this, I would normally capture, and it should not capture now. Normally it'll just sit there. So I click there. Okay, so it's honoring the rule. And it's also honoring the rule in its own AI decision-making process for the AI side. And the AI is currently slightly ahead of me, despite the fact that it's doing completely random moves. That's embarrassing. I must win. I'm sure there's minor bugs everywhere. We'll be discovering them as we go along. But next, though, here in settings, we got game rules working, largely speaking. I want to get screen and sound working. So I think next I'm going to do sound. I'm going to jump ahead to sound because I'm actually going to record some sounds and then get sound loading running. And I'm going to learn all about how the sound system works in Kivy. If you like what you see, please subscribe.